Who scores the first 4-pointer of the game, and Joe Williams with a very makeable kick here to make it 6 points.
I've been a sports person all my life. I played rugby league in the NRL, and I've struggled with mental health issues my entire life. So now I go around and speak to schools and speak to sports clubs and people in communities about the importance of looking after your mental health. We should value our mental health just as importantly as we value our physical health. We wouldn't see somebody running around on the field with a broken leg, so why do we think it's acceptable for people to be able to deal with mental health issues by themselves? Our mental health is just our brain health. Our brain is one of the most important organs in all of our bodies, so we have to make sure that we look after it. Conversations save lives, just by sitting down and having that conversation and telling your story, telling each other what problems we may be going through can then in turn help each other through those dark problems. Mental health challenges present in many different forms for many different people. For me personally, I isolate away from people. I close my mouth and don't like to talk about it. Where the importance is we notice that each other are doing it tough. We put our hand out for each other when they are doing it tough, and we help each other through these difficult times. We're stronger together. You can reach out to myself or the team through our website, www.joewilliams.com.au, through our Facebook page, The Enemy Within, Suicide Prevention and Wellbeing Education, our Instagram and Twitter on JoeWilliams_TEW.
And that brings me to my very special guest. It's Joe Williams joining us live this morning. Good morning, my braz.
Morning, brother. How you doing?
I'm really well. I'm really well. I won't take the stage, but I got tested positive for COVID about 5 days ago. yeah, bro.
How are we feeling?
I'm happy. I want it. I want it all my life. I'm happy for it to live with this. No, I think I'm on the very, 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 very light end of the scale. So it's been interesting. You probably didn't know that. So you asked how I was. I'll tell you.
It's always important to tell the truth around that stuff, man. Always.
And my wife's got it and my son's got it. We're just all in this big COVID hub in the house. I feel like we're not allowed to step out to the letterbox. But anyway, Braz, how are you doing?
Man, that's a conversation in itself, Like, the past 2 years have been super challenging for a lot of people because of lockdowns and because of, I guess, the forced nature of not being able to do things. Right? There's choice for a lot of people to do things, and then sometimes those choices get taken away from you. That's where people struggle, and I think people struggle with the fact that there is some authority around that. Like there's some real disgruntled people around the country, and I get and I understand why. But then also there's the people who a lot of people in our space are calling it like a silent pandemic. As far as the amount of people that are being challenged mentally and emotionally during this time, and I had some quite deep discussions about this. Talking and talking to people about why. It's because we live in in my opinion, it's because we live in such a fast-paced world. So many people are just on the go. As soon as they open their eyes every morning, we don't work 9 to 5 anymore. Like we're up at 6:30 and we're on our emails before we even get out of bed, checking social media, all of that stuff. And then you go and you work throughout the day, flat out, a million miles an hour, and then you come home at 5, 6 o'clock if you work the 9 to 5, and you don't switch off again till 10:30, 11 o'clock if you're lucky enough to go to bed before midnight. So the fact that everyone was forced to slow down, I think that challenged a lot of people. And why it challenged a lot of people is because a lot of people actually like sitting with this. They don't like sitting with the uncomfortable mess that talks to us every day. And that is the keys to freedom, right? I'm not talking about freedom as in, lockdown laws and things like that, because that's been a big challenge for a lot of people because of authority, right? But I'm talking about, there's one thing to be locked inside your house or inside your community. It's a real other beast when you're locked inside your own head.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's the work I do with people. I'm like, all right, let's not look at what's happening. Let's look at why it's happening. When you start to understand why, that gives you a little tip off as to what the work you got to do. We always talk about you got to do the work. You know, you got to do the healing, and so many people are on that journey, which is fantastic. But so many people go, yeah, I'm on this healing journey, but we're actually not doing the work, right? We're still scrolling through social media. We're not doing the learning about what's happening with our body and how it's manifesting in our behaviours, and then into physical illnesses later in our life.
It's a dangerous combo, isn't it? When the things that it's a dangerous combo that it involves hard work, which we already we're naturally people that you want to steer away from, especially when it's serious stuff.
It involves emotional work.
Exactly.
Which is spiritually challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah. You probably some people have never talked about it even to themselves, but let alone talking it to just anybody, even their closest friends, about the gear that goes on inside their brain and
because we just push it down. We push it down and band-aid it with different. And I wrote some articles last week, and again, it was about coping strategies. We push these things down mentally and emotionally, and just build coping strategies. And those coping strategies were built long before we're an adult and we actually know what we're doing. Like those disassociation coping strategies have been formed in the very early years of our lives. We don't want to go there. People don't want to go there, because it's challenging. But I'll give you a tip. That's where the freedom is. You start to work out that stuff. That's when you start to do the real work and start to understand why you are the way you are.
We've got an issue with talking to yourself, but also admitting that it's got something to do with before you were born. You just mentioned it then. People don't like don't like to talk about that because I think, do people feel like, well, it's so far back, I'll just fix it now. I'll ignore what happened before. I mean, we've got a colonial history. Is that what it's about? Like us ignoring?
I think also there's elements that we don't want to throw our dear loved ones under the bus.
Sure. Like my grandpa worked hard to get us here. Don't make out as if he's a bad person.
And I've had conversations. Really, really in-depth conversations, and super emotionally intelligent conversations with my old man around this stuff. And it was like, and I said, Dad, whilst different things may or may not have happened, right? What we have to understand, and it's not throwing other people under the bus, we have to understand is that people do the best job that they know how with the tools that they've got. And generationally, particularly for our mob, we didn't have a great deal of tools in that emotional toolbox because they were all bashed out of us, again, during the times of the colonial invasion. Like it's one thing to sit back and say all the trauma happened during colonization and we're the product of it. Okay, but where are we actually drawing the line in the sand and going, it stops here. It stops here.
Yeah. Oh man, so many good topics. I mean,
sorry to go deep on you, brother, straight up.
Mate, I don't want to waste any time, man. I don't want to waste your time or anyone else's time. We're here to talk. Let's go. It's great. Well,
that's the thing, right? That's the thing is that and I'm a believer of this stuff, is that why there is, and let's look at the work, the reasons why I do the work that I do. Because our people are dying far too much when it comes to not just suicide, but looking at the slow death of what we're doing to ourselves.
Are we talking coping mechanisms again?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Name. It's so good to name some probably common things and put them in coping mechanisms. I think it's I think it's a way more comfortable and accurate and sensitive way to say these people are doing something because they're hurt. Oh, you're diverting dealing with it. I think coping mechanisms is such a more accurate way of describing.
And I think it's a reality of what it is.
Yeah.
Is that all we're trying to do is just
cope.
All we're trying to do is escape pain.
Yeah.
I listen a lot and read a lot of a guy called Dr. Gabor Mate. And for those who are listening, it's spelled Gabor, Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E, Gabor Mate. He talks a lot about how people don't get addicted to substance; they get addicted to the relief that the substance gives them. Right. So, yeah. Right. So again, why are we drinking? Why are we taking drugs? Why are we having relationship challenges? Right. And there's another conversation to that when it goes back to secure attachment as a kid. Right. All of these stuff are built-in coping mechanisms that we're running away from discomfort. That's what it is. Like we are finding means to run away from what's challenging us inside our mind, and even deeper than that, what's challenging our nervous system.
Let's talk about hard worst case scenario. Oh, it's definitely not worst case scenario. I'm not experienced in this space. You are. One of your mates is running the other way. It's been doing it for a long time. Maybe you can see some things that'll help. Maybe you can't. I don't know. But you can see that they're running and they're continually doing it. In their mid-40s, they're running away. They don't want to. It would be helpful if they're a little bit aware of what the history's about. It's because it's close quarters. But they don't want to talk to anyone, and they don't want to listen to anyone, and they don't want to deal with their history, and they're just sitting there coping. As a bystander, as a friend, it hurts, and they mean something to you. How do we approach seemingly dead end? It seems like it's just two opposite magnetic forces coming together all the time, and you end up losing friendships, or but probably the most important thing is to be there for them. It's tough. I'm sure everyone's got a person in their life that they know that they think of a lot, that aren't doing well, but can't talk. They can't meet. They can't meet anywhere.
Let's have a look at how you got friends in the first place. You didn't get friends because you were disconnected. You got friends because you had common interests in different things, right? And even in the schoolyard, right from when we're kids. Like there are kids that we hang out with, and there are kids that we don't hang out with, and then there are kids that we might knock about with for a couple of days, and you soon work out that, hang on, like this ain't my vibe. Like this like I've got young kids in primary school now, and my little boy's in year 1, right? And even the younger ones than that. So they work out who are friends with them and who aren't. They've got their core group of friends of 4 or 5 people, right? So let's look at how you got friends in the first place, right? And then something has happened for you not to be friends, or for you to still have that genuine care that somebody's on the path that they don't necessarily need to be on, right? So the first thing back to how you got friends in the first place is just through connection, right? And there's a brilliant book by a guy called Johan Hari, which is called Lost Connections. If you don't have that book, or if you haven't heard that book, get the audio, get the book, whatever. Lost Connections, cool. And it talks. So for me, like it talks about the many people around the world who struggle with anxiety and depression, right? And he talks about how we as a people, as a human race, are the most disconnected that we've ever been, right? In the history of humankind, we're the most disconnected that we've ever been. Like you and I are sitting. You're in Melbourne, yeah?
Yeah, not far away.
We're sitting on a Zoom.
Yeah.
We're sitting on a computer. Technology's done fantastic things, but one thing that technology has done is isolated us a hell of a lot, right? So let's look at the history of humankind. We were a people, particularly Aboriginal people, right? First Nation people of this country. We were a people who did things together, right? And if we didn't do things together, we were either in trouble or we were isolated from the group.
Sure.
right? So everything that we did, all of our stories, and again, like, oh, where's this documented? I don't care about where it's documented or where it's not. All of our stories suggest, right across the country, that we did things together. And our stories were about helping each other, and our stories were about sharing with each other. So again, that they aren't just these mystical fables that we talk about. They were all lessons in how to live, right? And let's again go back to what that book is. One, Lost Connections. Why we are so sick with anxiety and depression is because we are so disconnected, right? And then that the friend who is isolating on that path. Let's look at how you got friends in the first place. You got friends through connection. So this friend, if you're on a different path now, I've lost friends because of the lifestyle that I live now, because I've choose to move away from that, choose to navigate away from the different I guess lifestyles that we all differently live. And there is no judgment or any hate on any of that. It's just that I choose to live the way that I live, and other people choose the way that they live the way that they live. But when we care for someone who is going through that really tough time, we need to start just getting with each other, just getting around a group, right? Because when we start getting around a group, conversations happen. When conversations happen, laughter happens. When it's not laughter, when it's on the other end of that, there might be tears, and you know, it's all releasing these different chemicals in our brain. You know, things like hugging each other when we're in a tough time. If the friend doesn't want to do that, again, you can't. What's the old saying? You can't lead a horse to the water. You can't make him drink it. You can only lead him there. You can't make him drink it, sort of thing. So what I say to people, what I say to parents, just get around each other and just keep planting the seed around support, always being there for each other, always, you know, I'm here for you, brother. I'm here for your sister. Anything you need, let's have a conversation about it. You know, and just keep planting those seeds.
I know there's some mums in this RGR family that we've got here, some with year ones, some with kind of year six, you know, in that range. I want to talk about that range of fellas where things really start to form. You know, this is a real call to parents. Like, probably, you know, mums and dads are looking at their kids going, I hope you're going to be all right when you're 18 or 20, you know. But how are they going when you're 12 and 13? Or how are you going when you're 8 and 9, when probably they don't have the communication skills just yet to reach out, but they're starting to.
Let's look at why. Let's look at why they don't have the communication skills.
Yeah,
that's learned too. When we're continuously silencing our kids' emotions, stop crying. Don't do that. Right? When we're continuously silencing our kids' emotions, then they are forming coping mechanisms to get through challenging times so they don't cry.
Have you had to rework your life?
Had to reword everything I do,
like kids,
right? from because I've for people who know and understand my story, I've got 5 kids from 3 separate relationships, right? So how I was as a dad then to how I am as a dad now, worlds apart.
Wow, are you seeing the product? Are their kids different?
Very different.
Yeah, wow,
very different. And I think looking at my youngest children, my youngest boy particularly, and for those who follow me on Instagram, you'll understand what I mean. My youngest boy particular, super emotional. And
which do you love? Do you also, is there a layer of protection that you also give him? Go, hey, young man, when you get out there, because the world's not up to speed with this kind of growing up.
So this is where I say that when let's not wait till they're 12 and 13 to talk about emotions. Like, let's start going when they're 5 and 6 and they're upset. Not get to your room, I don't want to hear it. Let's start saying, all right, tell me what's up, mate. Tell me what's up. Like I can't help you if I don't know why you're upset.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at why you're upset. Okay, Dad, I'm sad because of this. All right, then let's do the. Let's, as adults, we can differentiate, or we can put in tools to be able to help through that, right? But as 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, they don't have the tools. The only tool that they know is to switch it off.
Yeah.
And the more we switch it off, the more then we start to have the conversations when our 18, 19, 20-year-old boys and girls are burying their heads in alcohol and drugs. We're going, why the hell aren't you talking to me about it? It's because we've silenced them for 15, 16 years before that. You know, so it's important to have these relationships now, I believe. And there's loads of other different people and experts around the fields that I follow and try and learn from. And again, this isn't because of for my knowledges. It's to equip my kids to be able to equip their kids to break the long history and generational cycle of trauma and coping mechanisms in our life. So again, I don't talk about being physically, emotionally neglected or traumatized as a kid. I was super lucky to have, you know, some great love and care from my parents. But there's some emotional stuff that still jump up at me as a 38-year-old man because of things that have been implanted or because of behaviors that I've normalized and hidden for many, many, many years of my life, right? And those behaviors have to come from somewhere. The reaction to those behaviors come from somewhere. They don't just come up now, right? They come up, they talk about we're all of us, every single one of us are conditioned during the first 1,000 days of our life.
Blackfellas know the saying, you can't be what you can't see. A lot of representation is books. It's Jono. It's Jono the fireman. He's white. He's got a wife and 2.5 kids and the dog, and it just doesn't look the same. That's not what goes on. Let's flip it. You talk about old ways, living the old ways. Non-Indigenous mob, white mob. Let's just call them quickly without being too just segregating here. Looking at storybooks and going, well, that's not me. When we are trying to teach old ways, which is First Nations ways, which is not them. Like they're like, well, I'm not Indigenous. They could. How can we start getting the story looking a lot more familiar and being the other way around with just because you're not Indigenous, this is for you. This is for you. How can we improve that? I mean, the gates are always open if people really understand Indigenous culture. It's very welcoming. You talk about meeting places and stuff, but a lot of non-Indigenous people who have come here, arrived here in the last 230 years, don't have any connection to that system. How can we help, or how can society help presenting, as you call it, living the old ways?
First, I'll say welcome to our world.
100%.
Because we've lived in a world where we don't fit, and it's been a one-way street for 230 years. I don't even talk about the word reconciliation, because to reconcile is to heal a broken relationship. Now, if we're honest, we've never had a relationship to start with. It's been a one-way street, and we've never had anything our way, as in to learn, right? So only through our own means. The way that this world is, still very much so, isn't built for our old ways, isn't built for us. The capitalist world isn't built for us in the way that we are. So what I talk about a lot with in communities is that we struggle to walk between two worlds. Right, we got a foot in. We need to have a foot in each world. Strong in identity, strong in who we are. But let's have a look at identity. Identity isn't particularly about what we look like either, right? Because that has changed a hell of a lot in the last 200 years. Like identity. When I look at it, identity, it's about the behaviours that I have, right? And the behaviours that I try and stick to, or try and have every day, every single day, is implanted. Every behaviour that I have is centred around values. Now, when I talk about the old ways, and I wrote about this in The Guardian last week, when I talk about the old ways isn't particularly about going back and living in the bush, or cooking and catching your own feed. I'm a hunter and gatherer by all means. I just do it at Woolworths. Right, it's about walking in two worlds. It's about so the old ways. I speak a lot about the old ways in in how we need to live. Let's have a look at what culture is, right? And I say to people all the time, what is culture? Culture is behaviors repeated over time, right? So our behaviors around culture were things like celebration, with things like art and dance and ceremony and there's a hell of a lot of us that don't have that anymore, right? So it's about trying to learn what it is, and it ain't just about. There is very specific ways and focuses on how we do and did things for a long time. It isn't just about getting a beautiful dot painting and calling it Aboriginal art. Like, there is specific story to a lot of things, and our stories have lessons. And whilst everything wasn't documented down on pens and paper, everything for us was documented in the landscape, documented in our art and through our stories and through our dance, right? So when I talk about living the old ways, it's about learning the old values, right? Learning to live with the old values, living with the old values, and those old values are all deeply embedded in the old stories, right? So people often say, Joe, it's fantastic the work you do, go around sharing your story. I'm like, I don't just share my story. Like, it's like I connect with people because of some different things that we go through. But I talk more about the old stories, right? And wherever I am, whatever country I'm in, I say, tell me about your story. And tell me about the story of where this country is. And when we start to learn and talk about that story, we start to uncover the hidden messages, the hidden lessons, the hidden values that all of those old stories were centered around. When we start to live with those lessons and those values, that's where we find wellness. That's where we find, and we can live mentally and emotionally well.
Love it.
Because again, like, that's what the old ways were all about. The old ways were about being present in what we did here and now. Not, the biggest challenge for a lot of our communities is the thing that we have on our watch, thing that we have on our wrist, our watch, because everything's centered around time. We have to do something by a certain time. We have to be somewhere at a certain time. We have to hand something in, do something, like we have to eat at a certain time. Like, we shouldn't be just worried about now.
Yeah.
What we do now, because a lot of those practices of culture, whatever the practice may be, was always about doing things now. Art, dance, song, everything was about now. It was about presence.
It's great. The timing things, it eliminates, when we're in a rush, it eliminates forward thinking. We can't forward think as well as we want to when we're on a time frame. Hey, you've got to be here now. Well, I need more time to think or forward think. You talk about negative behaviours. I think they're really interrelative, and one precedes the other. We make decisions too quickly because we're forced to. We can't think about how this applies to the wider society and community. Talk about negative behaviours, which is something that you wrote about in your article.
Well, a lot of our negative behaviours are a reaction.
A knee-jerk, you know what I mean? Like, we don't get time to think.
Just bang, react on what's happening here. The first response of what's happening here, and a lot of the time when it comes to negative stuff, the first response is a negative response, and it's a protective. It's a protective response, right? So when we look at the negative response, let's dive a little bit deeper. Those negative responses are a protective measure to keep us safe, right? And that's what a lot of people don't understand of what trauma is that when we look at someone or when we're judged by a certain way or when we're spoken to, when we're spoken down to and pointed at, and somebody gets in our space, it takes us back immediately to different behaviours that we've learned, different behaviours that we've been conditioned in, and there's an immediate reaction within a minute millisecond that screams to us protection, right? So all of our negative responses, let's have a look at it again. The negative responses are firstly around protection of us, right? Out of survival. Now that survival that fight or flight, that survival mechanism that is deeply embedded within us, that reacts within an absolute instant for thousands and thousands of years, was a protection mechanism. Now, because of different challenges that we've had, we've gone from being adaptive to maladaptive and threatening to us because of our reaction. We don't know how to understand it and or articulate what we're trying to feel in that instant. And just because I can talk about this stuff doesn't mean I'm exempt from it. I get challenged and triggered by it every day of the week.
It's probably one of my most interesting things that I'm personally working on in myself is how quick I respond to things. It's not about how quick it is, and it doesn't make me look like I know what I'm doing just because I'm quick, because you end up doing things, and my teens were like that, and even my late 20s, early 30s, making knee-jerk reactions, and the results were really tough to deal with, and you know, lost friendships, and they probably won't be repaired, but you're spot on. Like, I just find that one of the most fascinating things personally. I'm really loving hearing this and having to just, how do you stop? How do you put a pause, enough of a buffer, build a buffer in something that's happening so quickly, and it's sometimes a few years can go past, you go, far out, I'm still peeving off my wife or my mum.
I think observation's the key. Being able to observe, firstly being aware.
Yeah.
But then being able to observe the process of what's happening.
Yeah.
So whilst it still happens to me and I get triggered and I'm like, I could just really erupt right now.
Same.
I can just bite my lip and just have just a 1 second pause to 2 second pause and go, hang on a minute. I know what's happening here. I don't need to react this way. And that I'm lucky that I'm someone who's super duper self-aware. And again, like this is people talk about what I experienced over many years as this negative voice that's in my head has actually helped me through these times so many times.
Yeah, right.
Because it helps me to observe. Because what it does is it talks to me in an instant, and then I go, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Is that right or is that not? Right. And whilst I had a conversation with Marcy Langton many years ago, and I said, and people say to me, you know, Joe, at times you're under pressure, whether it be interviews or even different, you know, talk show type stuff, talk show type vibe around different conversations and topics. At times you're under pressure, but you always come across as if you're so calm and collected.
Yeah.
It's because of everything that's happening here is super duper fast. And I can differentiate. There's 4 conversations going on in my head now. So I can sit back and go, that one isn't right. This one is a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Let's have a look at this one a bit more. So then, you know, and Marcy was like, my dear, that isn't an illness. That's a gift. Right. So I'm super duper lucky that I can differentiate. And whilst everything happens really, really, really fast up here, out there it plays out really, really slow.
It's funny.
So I can separate the different situations, conversations, and articulate different things that are going on in my head because it's all going so fast in my head.
My wife's just jumped online, and I was thinking about her as you were talking, because she's quite the opposite. She got brought up in remote community, Catherine. I mean, you know what the community mob are like. They're way less busy upstairs, mostly. She's someone that takes, you know, half a year to process what I just said, you know, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Come on, you got to know what you want. And like, I put way too much pressure. So I was speaking very truthfully before. I've got things I want to work on in how much space I give her, and also now my son Lockie, who's 8, and I just want to give them space to talk. So it's very interesting. She's quite the opposite. I reckon she's looking for one thing. He was sitting there and we're looking at the rain, and that's all that's happening. It's quite beautiful to watch, but we've got to be sensitive around. We've got to be sensitive around that. Hey, like, it can be a gift.
That state of presence, man.
It's present.
That state of presence.
She's super present.
That is an absolute gift in today's world.
It's always.
And again, like all of these all of these different techniques that we see that are being splashed across different social medias around different, you know, when I was at Wollongong Uni, and they spoke, you know, about mindfulness and meditation and this thing they call earthing now. And I was like, earthing, man, our people took their shoes off and didn't have no shoes. Like, so we earthed for thousands and thousands of years. Like,
Right.
like all of these new modern ways are all just rebranded from things that we did for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right. So again, like the old ways was all about presence. There was no watch. There was no time. There was, you know, time came in when we were slaves, you know, because they said, you know, you can't have a drink yet. It's not time enough to drink. It's not that time to have something to eat yet. You know, like the concept of time. You know, well, why do you think blackfellas are always late?
Yeah, because they leave when they're ready.
We turn up when we're supposed to.
Yeah, sure.
Not when you want us there. We turn up when we're supposed to. When you're ready. Like, and again, that there is so much positive in that way of life. And, you know, I just in Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey's book, it's called What Happened to You. It's a book about, rather than let's reframe the conversation of not what's wrong with you. Let's look at what happened to you for you to be like this, right? And the quote, and I'm just paraphrasing here, it's something like, you know, the very cultures that have been marginalized around the world will be the cultures to help bring us back to the right way of life. Because of presence. Let's look at climate change. How people sustainably live with the earth. Like, and it comes down to the other side of the conversation with that is the ideology of supremacy and not wanting to listen to people that have been here for thousands of years that what they did worked. I always say what we did worked. What we're doing now is not working.
We've got a full circle moment going here, Braz. It's exactly how we started today's conversation. Is looking at climate change and how we've been doing things, and that colonial way. You know, that need to squeeze everything out of it. And talking of time,
the capitalist way, man. Capitalist way.
It's very poisonous, and it doesn't allow us to be us. Just stop and think. I love it, Joey. I appreciate you jumping on here at such a last minute. I always seem to throw you a bone and you grab it, which is I love this. I love that you've jumped up and talked to us this morning. I think there's some real valuable points here, especially talking about kids, different age groups. I think societal, cultural. But let's get back to those old ways and meet again soon, bros.
You know, the first thing I do when I go into schools, when I go into communities, when I go anywhere, I say, all right, who here is Aboriginal? Talking to our mob, obviously, but who here is Aboriginal? You know, the kids put their hand up. All right, who is proud to be Aboriginal? All the kids, you know, throw their hand up. Okay, tell me what you're proud of. We're proud of our culture. Okay, let's have a look at that. What is culture? You know, and let's have a look what culture is and why we're proud of it. And there's a lot of us that don't know what it is. Like it's the knee-jerk response that again that keeps us safe. Yeah, I'm proud to be Aboriginal, but I'm proud of our culture. But we're probably behaving not in ways of culture.
Boom.
You know, and a lot of the challenges we always say, yeah, I'm black and I'm proud, and we're quick to discount or even really speak against what colonialism has done to us.
Yeah.
But we're busy doing that on a Saturday night, right? So we can't have both ways, right? We have to learn to walk in two worlds, but the challenges with a lot of our behaviours in community are coming from behaviours that are very learnt, behaviours that aren't necessarily to do with culture. So if we stand up and say, yeah, we're proud of our culture, let's start to learn about it a bit more. And this isn't again, not me trying to say that I'm better than anyone else, because it's taken me late in life to learn about it too. I spent 10 years in a system playing footy where it wasn't celebrated. Right? So when we look at what culture is, culture's about teamwork too. It's about them old values. Like, let's start learning to live about them old values. It ain't particularly just about doing some artwork or doing some dance. It's about learning. It's about how we treat people. Right, so let's start living those ways.
Big love to you, Joe. Thanks for joining us today, my bros, and I hope we get to talk to you sooner rather than later. But thanks for joining us, part of Men's Health Week at MOVEMBER. What's wrong with your Mo? Where's your Mo? I told you got to put a Mo on.
I'll tell you why I don't do it anymore. And MOVEMBER do fantastic work. I'll tell you why I don't do it anymore. And I don't do things particularly around the big days.
Yeah.
It's because I do it every other day of the year. So I don't need a mustache to talk about men's health or talk about mental health.
I love it.
And I get that a lot of people do that. That's fantastic. But they'll also go out and get on the piss on the weekend and go home and smash their wife up. You know, like, let's talk about all behaviours all year round.
It's where the work. That's where the work needs to be done, isn't it? All year round. Yeah. Joe, love you, brother.
Always a pleasure, brother.
Yeah, man. Big love to you and your kids, and we'll catch up with you soon. Don't
forget, next time you want me on, make sure it's super last minute.
Even more last minute than last night. I don't know. I'm no much better than. I don't like planning things too far ahead. We've got to live in the moment. You live in the moment, bruz.
We never planned, brother. We never planned. We made it happen.
Joe, thanks again, man. We'll catch up with you soon.
Take care, brother.
You're the best.